Hey friends, I'm Daniel Nesbitt and welcome back to Designing a Revival Typeface. In the last episode we covered off a good number of letters, and in this episode and potentially one more we're going to wrap up all of the fun or trouble characters depending on how you want to look at it. I know a lot of you have been kind of excited to see me tackle some letters including the S and the G, which is always a common one. So we're going to see how far we get in today's episode and maybe we'll get a chance to tackle some of those. Hopefully we get it all done in one. If not, maybe we might have one more really short episode, but basically the goal here is to wrap up the upper and lowercase Latin alphabet. So let's jump in and take a look at what we've got here. So on screen I do have the upper and lowercase letters, but I did want to point something out real quick, that if I go over to my All tab, you are going to notice there's quite a few more characters on the screen here. And so this kind of starts to give you an idea of the direction that I want to take things. The reason that I have these specific additional letters on screen here is because I'm actually taking a look at the original scan that I have of Record Gothic. And it does include a lot of these special characters and punctuation marks. So that has kind of been my reasoning, if you will, for including those additional letters. We're still going to concentrate on the upper and lowercase, but I just wanted to point out why you're seeing all of these extra characters on screen here. So with that out of the way, what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to copy the image so we can start using that. And I think what I'm going to do is we're just going to start off with something kind of simple. And I probably should say that tongue-in-cheek because just because I say it's simple doesn't mean it's always simple. Anyway, the Z. And the reason that I'm choosing to start with the Z is that I think we can leverage this being the same shape, if you will, upper and lowercase, and so we can kind of get through these letters a little bit quicker. So if we go ahead and get all of this set up here, I am going to make a few kind of shortcuts along the way here, but one thing I immediately notice is that this little spot here is a bit shorter than the opposite side. I might argue, just for the sake of consistency actually, I don't really see it in the scan, but I think there may be a benefit to including that up at the top here as well. Then we'll kind of skate this in a little bit. And then as far as this diagonal line goes, I think all I'm going to do is we're just going to draw a square here and then just kind of position it as best we can, and we can kind of work out the weight from here. I could grab something like the letter N or something like that. I don't think that's going to really be necessary for this, so we'll go ahead and we'll grab these two and then kind of back up and figure out what we need to do here. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to give this a big old scoot, and I'm going to try and keep this even too, because I do want the weight to stay even if I can. So that's probably too thick. But if we kind of back it off a little bit, I don't think that's too bad. And then we're going to kind of get this to stand up a little bit more. So there's a 20 unit difference between the top and the bottom here. And there is a 5 unit difference there. If I do 10 and 15, it gets us pretty even. So back up here real quick, I might even nudge that a bit thinner as well, just kind of taking a look at how these two kind of match up. As far as my side bearings, I might just go V for now. My reasoning for that is that there's a lot of open, empty space kind of on either side here, and I think that might be okay. Could take a look at O. I'm just worried O might get a little, well, maybe O doesn't get too far out of the realm there. So again, this is why I'm tackling the Z, because I think that's a pretty a pretty easy low-hanging fruit, if you will. So with that one out of the way, let's go to the lowercase. I am going to bring in the lowercase character for the background here. We'll just kind of loosely put that into position. I think I am going to bring this down into here. One other thing we would take a look at, the crossbar of my T was 56. I suppose I could have looked at my dimensions palette for that. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to switch that to 56. We're going to switch that to 56. And then we'll just kind of get both of these into place and kind of work from there. So I think my next step is probably get the width, something about like such. And then we'll just, basically we're going to kind of rinse and repeat what we did with the uppercase, where we'll get kind of these two key points lined up here. And then it's just a matter of going in and then figuring out what our weight needs to be. So in this case, maybe something like that. That's 61. I know that's 65. So that gets me up to 63. That's 66. I don't think I'm worried about 1 point difference. And then we're actually going to use the O again for this. Now, in my little fuzzy preview down here, it does look a little heavy. So maybe I knock that back just a touch. We'll also kind of take a look up top here as well. It might mean that this even needs to get a little bit thinner. That's fine too. So it was 56. What if we did maybe like 52? Take a little bit of weight out of the top and the bottom. I don't think that's too terrible. It kind of matches with the thin, maybe a little bit more. Or maybe we go to 55. I know that's like basically one off of 56, but I'm kind of going back and forth here a little bit on that. Or maybe it's just a matter of thinning this up a little bit more. I think I'm kind of feeling like I move fast and break things, and we are going to talk a little bit more about proofing as we kind of go on here, but I feel like the Z is always tricky because it has that diagonal stroke that it's the only one that goes the quote-unquote wrong way. So I think for now, I'm not going to let that hold up any progress here. We can kind of take a look at that, especially once I get this into proofs and whatnot. I think that'll work a little bit nicer, but I think for the moment we can probably cross the Z off. I'm gonna kind of combine the X and the K here, and I think to start we're gonna go with the uppercase one first. And what I kind of want to work out here is my diagonals. And then once I feel good about that, I can probably use what I've learned from that and then jump over to the K. I might also be inclined to grab pieces from the Y here, because I think that's actually a fairly close approximation of what I want for my stroke thickness. If I do have to change it, I'm thinking and hoping I won't have to change it much. It will have to kind of find its way over a little bit. And I'm just going to trim it this way. So that kind of gets that there. And then as far as this part goes. So when I draw this here, this is going to feel wrong for a moment, at least to my eye. It does look like it just kind of, it's two lines that crisscross over each other. But I just can't bring myself to think that that's actually the case. So what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of nudge that over ever so slightly. I don't think it needs to go much because it's not like it's crossing a super thick line. But I think even just that little bit makes me feel a bit better about myself. So then if I write out a word there, it doesn't look too terrible, if I'm being honest. I think it's at least enough that we can kind of go over to the K here. And we can kind of begin to work with that. So let's grab a few elements and we will unlock this image here and we'll find the letter K in the scan. There we go. So we'll line it up with the vertical stroke there. And then this is just a matter of figuring out where all of our pieces belong here. So if I kind of move this to that point, we'll kind of zhoosh that over. So one thing I know about the K is that these do kind of taper in a little bit more. I probably could have done the same on the X. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like this font has been a little bit weird, so I'm just gonna kind of let it be for now. But you can definitely tell, like here, they did taper it in, so sometimes it doesn't always feel like it's consistent. I guess that's my challenge with this one, but we'll make it work. So something like that, and then we'll just auto adjust the side bearings there. And this does look a little bit thinner than these, but I think maybe that's where I just take advantage of this and maybe do something like that. We are going to do an ever so slight taper in where everything kind of meets there. I don't think it's enough to notice, but I'm also okay with that. And then kind of with these two out of the way, we're basically just going to kind of go back down here. We're going to do a similar thing to what we did with the Z, where we'll just kind of see how the uppercase component kind of works for the lowercase. So we'll kind of get that roughly there. And I'll just do my best to trim it along the X height and the baseline. So I think Glyphs is willing to kind of play ball with me here a little bit, so that's okay. And then we'll just kind of adjust these as we go. So it looks like these do kick out just a touch more. Just kind of get that a little bit closer to the scan. And then I'll just kind of pop maybe like an N and an O next to it. I used the V for this, so maybe we'll do that instead. I think what I'm going to do is we're just going to turn off the blur down here. And then we just kind of need to figure out what do our thicks and thins kind of look like. So maybe something kind of like that. Again, I'm not letting perfection get in the way of things here, because I think eventually what I want to do is jump over to a proof and get a better idea of where things are at. So what I'm going to do for the K, I'm not going to grab the whole thing because we already kind of have one element of this established, but I think I can just grab parts that are different, and I'm just going to give myself a little bit more space there to work with. And then again, just kind of line everything up. For this one, we're going to do a little bit left to right there. I did the O on that side, so for now I'm going to use the O on this side. As we kind of look at the spacing with a little bit more of a critical eye, we can determine if that's still where we want to be. Get all of those. We will shorten that up so we don't have that little chunk sticking out there. And so that's kind of where we're at with the K. It's not too bad. But again, I want to see this in more of a context, so we are just going to probably kind of move on from that a little bit. So with that out of the way, we are now to the A, the G, and both of the S's. And I think what I'm going to do, because I like to save the best for last, is we're going to jump over to the A first here. And kind of what my trick with this is, at least to start, is see how much of this shape we can make work. Now, what kind of stinks about my scan here, and admittedly this is on me, it's not the greatest scan when it came to the A. It did not scan well at all. So we'll kind of have to work around that a little bit. And hopefully I'm at least able to make something from this. I can at least probably get the general shape. So what we'll do, we'll just kind of get these in place. Now I know some of this stuff won't be 100% perfect, but that's fine. I think there's kind of it kind of kicks over like such too, and it does kind of curve. I'll deal with the curve a little bit later. But I think what we want to do is just try and tame this curve and just kind of get some of these points in a better place. So we're gonna kind of do something like that. That's also saying that's not a smooth connection. There we go. I think for the most part the way the E terminates there is okay there, so I'm not really going to worry about that part of the A. I think we're just going to kind of keep our focus on making sure we've got a nice line width here. One other thing I could take a look at would be Super Tool and show the curve. I don't know how much this kind of helps us. It was already kind of close, so that's okay. And then I don't think... I kind of wish Super Tool had like a heat map. I do have the actual heat map plugin, which is kind of nice, but yeah, sometimes it would be nice just to have it all in one. So I think that's relatively okay though for the time being. I could throw an O next to this as well, because that goes to 53, we're at 56. Let's open these corners up. And now it's 53. So now that's the same as the O, which I think is fine. As far as down here goes, I don't think it really kicked out like that much, but I think it's kind of something to that effect is what we're after. And let's make these curves instead of corners. And then we'll just kind of get these handles roughly kind of the same distance. As I get that bowl kind of wrapped around, we can decide if that's the best way we want to go with it or not. And then speaking of the bowl, I think really my best bet here is just going to be to manually draw it out. I don't know that I feel confident enough that we have anything that's too close in shape. So what I'll want to do is let's start with the handles on this side and kind of get this sorted out. So right now that's 66. We can make that a width of 68 there, so that's going to match with the width of our O over there. That's fine. Kind of push these back a little bit. So this says it's 54. But I may kind of thin that out just a touch. And I don't know if these are like super parallel. I don't think they are. I think that's better now. And then, yeah, kind of curves out to 50 there. We'll see how long that lasts. I may come back and adjust that a little bit. And I'll probably want to deal with this part here. Maybe so it just doesn't feel as abrupt. It's kind of got more of a nice kind of curve to it. As far as this part goes, we're going to kind of deal with this in two parts here. I think that'll be the best bet. But I think we can kind of square that up a little bit. I don't think these look too terrible. So that goes 66, 62. We do want that to thin back out again though. And then for here, what I'm going to do is, well, actually before we get there, let's kind of move that back a little bit. Because it looks like the, kind of the apex of that curve is somewhere around there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take these two handles, or actually before I take those two handles, let's maybe push that up a little bit more. It looks like it kind of joins a bit higher than what I was going there. And I may have to kind of adjust that handle around anyway, which is fine. Because it probably comes somewhere like there is where it starts to kind of turn back. Honestly, that's kind of not terrible for a first pass. I am noticing that is kind of a little bit thicker on the bottom. So I'll be nice and add a little bit more weight to it. What else am I looking at here? Kind of wonder if that maybe... if I got my angle right there. It feels like I kind of do, but I kind of don't. Or maybe I just need more weight kind of through here. I can kind of adjust that a little bit more. Maybe that's the play. We can also bring Super Tool in and see what that has to say. Maybe that gives us some clues here. I feel like I'm kind of in the ballpark, but sometimes you just need Super Tool to come in and humble you a little bit, but I don't think that's too bad. One other thing I was going to take a look at. So it does look like the comb, it seems to kind of grow nice and evenly. We'll kind of adjust some of these a little bit. The inside, I know Super Tool kind of gets a little bit weird with that, but yeah, it's also not going to let me kind of curve that around the way I want to, and I'm just kind of wondering maybe something like that's a little bit more even. Yeah, it's just kind of struggling giving me a read on that inner shape there. So I think what we'll do is we'll just kind of throw some side bearings on it. Again, I'm also kind of working off of a fuzzy character too, so That could be kind of working against me as well. But I feel like the general shape is there, so I'm okay with that. And I don't think the way that kind of curves off looks too terrible either while I'm looking at it. Yeah, all right. I think for now we'll call that the letter A taken care of. So this leaves everybody's favorite letters. I think what I'm going to do is we're going to save the S for last, because we can kind of have a 2-for-1 feature on that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pop the lowercase g in first here. Now, I could just go ahead and grab the O here and decompose it. And then we just kind of have to figure out how this is going to manifest itself. So I'm going to worry about kind of these outer shapes first, and then we'll kind of go back and maybe take care of, well, I shouldn't say maybe, we are going to go and take care of the weight on the inside. So, and I'm going to do 53 here. And then this way is 62, so maybe we bump that up to 68. It does seem to jive with the scan in the background there, so I guess I'm okay with that. How about we leave that for now? One other thing that we're going to do here is, just because it's easy and then we can kind of jump to the tail of this, is the ear. And all my plan was for this was to take all 4 of these and just kind of give it a nice pleasant curve. And I think, yeah, it kind of straightens off there, and we'll also correct our path direction while we're at it. But what I can do then is I can kind of work that into place. So for the time being, I think that'll be okay. Give it a little bit more heft. I think as we start getting into the smaller sizes, we'll probably want to figure that out a little bit more. But what we can do is we can get the rest of the shape put together here. So we are going to draw it perhaps this way. So what I'm going to do with the tail is we're just going to kind of go for the extreme points of what would be a circle. So I'm not going to worry about the spine here. Not yet. But if I think about it like a circle, we do something like that. Okay. So this looks a little bit zigzaggy, which is fine. What I'm going to do from here is we're going to kind of get everything to 68 for these points. Kind of loosely get those into position. This should be 54. And I think that's maybe going to be something like that. This kind of, you almost have to think of this more like an S than a curve. But from here, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of start with the easy part, which in my opinion is the bowl along the bottom here. Because if we break this down into some basic shapes, you can think about this part more or less like we're trying to draw a circle. That's the idea with this. I've seen some people do this. I think I've even done it myself a couple of times, where I'll actually even draw a circle for this, and then basically just kind of chop off, wherever it needs to deviate from being a circle. Depending on how I draw this one, I may do that, but I want to see how this goes first before I I get to that. So let's just go ahead and we'll just kind of do our best to get it close, basically, which is probably the whole MO, if you will, behind this entire episode, is just get it close. We'll take a look when it comes to proofing, and we're going to do a little bit more in regards to that. So from here, I think those are lined up. Okay. We're just going to try and get everybody loosely even here. It's not going to be perfect, but the idea is we just don't want it to be offensive. That's the goal. All right, now for this is going to be kind of a hint as to how I'm going to draw the S. So I'm not going to worry about putting too many points along the spine of the G here. And actually, this is probably what should be carrying the most weight, come to think of it. But what we're going to do is we're going to take these points, or these handles, I should say. We're just going to do our best. Actually, let's do the top one here first. But basically, we're just going to take these and we're going to stretch them until it starts to kind of fill or form out that shape. That's kind of all we're doing, is we're just taking these and we're stretching these. What I have learned when you're dealing with curvy shapes like this is the fewer points you have to move or deal with, or the fewer handles you have to move and deal with, the better. The idea basically is that we kind of want to get that loose shape. It's going to have a little bit of curve or a little bit of, sass to it, if you will. But we don't want to be sitting there with like, a dozen points or a dozen handles and trying to figure out everything that needs to move. Our goal is basically just to kind of roughen the shape, and then once we're happy with that, we can kind of refine it more. So we're going to make sure that that's about 68, because this is going to be kind of a thicker stroke here, and I may even come back and thin some of this out at some point. We'll just kind of see how this shapes up. But then I'm also going to come back here. We're going to grab these two handles. We'll just kind of do something maybe about like that. And we'll do the same on the inside as well. So this is going to kind of get our loose shape, our loose definition, and we're just going to do our best to kind of make it work. Let's see there. So maybe something about like that. There's going to be a lot of tweaking on this too, so I'm going to give myself permission to not make that perfect. Okay, so we've roughly got our G here. And if I look at the background here, we're actually somewhat reasonably close to the scan. So I have my thin of 53 here. I have a 68 for my thickness here. I think it's mostly 68. It even kind of gets to 70 at one point. Although not really, because that's kind of on an angle. Over here, it gets to 68, which I don't know that bothers me too much, but I do notice that I do have a bit of weight here. So we'll kind of take that out a little bit. And then the other thing that I'm noticing is at this point, might need to kind of move up and adjust a little bit so that the apex of this curve is right about there. And so this is just going to be kind of a matter of trusting my eye and nudging pieces around. And basically it's a matter of, does this curve look like it should? Does it look bumpy? Does it look lopsided? That's just kind of the question that I'm answering in my head as we go here. make sure that anything that's an actual curve is a green dot. That's usually pretty helpful too. So this looks serviceable, let's call it. And I think what I can do, whoops, we don't want to open corner, we want to unlock the image. For now, we're just going to put this on the, we'll just put it on the Uppercase S for now. I'm mostly just doing this to get it out of the way, so we'll lock that, but we'll sort that a little bit later. So, if I came up with a word, let's go with trig on, is it trigonometry? Trig in, oh. Actually, you know what, we're not even gonna, let's go with the word going. Or we can go digging if we want to have it kind of back to back there. So if I kind of blur this just a little bit, the G might have a little bit of extra weight to it. Maybe that's okay right now. But what I'm going to do here is I want to go in, and so I run a program, or I should say a plugin, and it's called Red Arrows. This is free in the plugin manager. You can download it and use it, and that's fine. So when I have this enabled, that's what we're seeing here with like these yellow arrows here, or if I have something that gets out of kilter a little bit, the red arrows, which tells me these are a semi-vertical handle, or that's the extremum. So this says the yellow ones are an inflection point, and I kind of like this plugin because that loosely tells me if I took the knife tool and kind of ran it through there, that's about where I want to be. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a pain, but the reason that I do it this way is I can kind of go back then, and we can start to kind of refine the spine of this letter. So this is where it kind of flattens out a little bit if we wanted to. And it starts to kind of give more of a refinement than anything else. So that's kind of the whole idea or point behind leaving that inflection point until the end here. The other benefit is that I can also kind of make it so that these handles are more even, but it also kind of evens out these handles as well too. I can kind of do the same in the other way. It probably will panic a little bit. It's not always perfect with the inflection points. But I think something like that. So that's about 66, which I don't think is too terrible. I could bump it up to 68, and I don't think that's the end of the world either. But if I back up, I don't think it looks too terrible. Now we could maybe add a little bit more contrast to some of these parts here. I don't think it needs to be too much though. But that's kind of the G in a nutshell, is basically what we're after. I think you could argue, I probably could make the link maybe a little bit thicker, or kind of bring this in maybe a little bit. Maybe that's the move there. So I can kind of play around with this a little bit. Maybe that needs to be a little bit rounder. Although that kind of messes up a few things. This is going to kind of be the back and forth that you have, which unfortunately I hate to say is kind of the name of the game here at this point. We could load up Super Tool too. I don't know that Super Tool helps as much with something like this, but you could certainly try. But maybe we just kind of play around with the points here. Those look okay. We can maybe reduce the volume a little bit. We can kind of play around with it. You kind of get the idea though of where this is going. And I honestly think this character is probably the trickiest out of everything. Oops. It is a difficult one to get right, so don't feel bad if you don't get this right on the first try, or if it doesn't look right on the first go, because I don't really think that many people do get this right on the first try. And that's okay. But what we're gonna do is maybe kind of redraw that a little bit. And maybe see what that does. Maybe I don't like that inner curve. Maybe it's something more akin to that. And maybe that's not quite as offensive then. If I step back, I don't think that's too terrible. One other thing that I'm going to do is just kind of level that out a little bit more as well. But more or less, that's in a nutshell how you draw a G. And I'm pretty happy with that. And like I said, there's going to be more tweaking and adjusting as we go here. So for the sake of keeping the episode moving along, we are going to jump back and we are going to get that final character taken care of. And it kind of makes sense to leave this for last in my mind a little bit, because, I mean, how many words end in S that you know of? So what I'm going to do is we're going to grab the C for this. And I'm not going to use all of the elements of the C. As a matter of fact, I might just chop it there. I've seen some people kind of do it this way, where you can take the two halves of a C, the upper and the lower half of a C, mirror it, and then try and make this work. That is certainly one way to do it. That's not going to be the way that I go ahead and do this here. Instead, what I think I'm going to do is we're going to kind of concentrate on one here and kind of get it to where it needs to be. And then basically we'll kind of make this one corner there, and we'll flip it down and just kind of get that roughly lined up about there, and then roughly lined up about there. And so let's maybe call it good about there. So it is going to kind of be a little bit out of bounds, but I think that'll be okay. Now, if you're paying attention to the G that we just did, we're basically going to do the same thing. And this is kind of what I love about the S and the G, is they're more or less, I don't know if related is a strong word, but it's basically the same approach. So for the uppercase, it is 73 units for the width here. So we are going to start with that. And again, I might adjust these as we go, but then it's going to be the exact same thing that we did earlier. So we're going to, for the bottom half and the top half here, the part that kind of has that circular feature, we're going to kind of go and do that. So we're basically just going to focus on making a circle, a nice, pleasant circle. We're not even going to worry about the spine. We'll go through and we'll do the same on the top here. And I will say too, the more you do this, the less scary an S gets. I think everybody looks at an S and kind of gets, a little bit spooked by it, because it can seem intimidating to draw. But honestly, once you kind of get it to this point, I don't think it's really that bad. I think there are other letters that are far scarier to deal with. So I'll just kind of adjust. I'm just looking at my weight here of these circles. And again, I know there will be some going back here and adjusting, so that's fine. But then what we'll do, we'll take take our handles here. And I'm holding down shift just so that they pop into a 90 degree here. And then you basically just pick a side and move until we get something somewhat decent here. Sometimes you have to kind of move some of these points around a little bit, but that's okay. The inflection point will pop up, that's fine. We like seeing that. And the one thing you'll notice that I'm not doing here is I'm not going to mirror this. And the reason that I don't mirror this is because the upper portion of an S, the negative space up here, should be a little bit more than the bottom. So I'm not going to be too concerned if these aren't exactly the same. Ultimately, when I go into preview mode, I'm looking for this to look like what I want. So that's kind of the plan or the goal here. So I think we'll go 68 there, we'll go 68 there. I think that's an okay way to do that. This looks a little funky over here. So I may need to kind of resolve that a little bit. I think that maybe just need to come down a little bit more somehow. Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe it just needs to come over. Maybe that's the better way. You're still 68. Okay. And then roughly this in the middle, so that's up to 80. Which is a little bit on the thick side, but what I could do... if I bring that down to 76, so my curved thick is 73 for this. If I were to look at something like the V, yeah, I guess I kind of did 74 there too, so... I might be in a ballpark here. We could pull in Super Tool. And again, I'm not too far off on my point placements here. And it's not the end of the world. I'll say this, it's not the end of the world if Super Tool doesn't 100% line up. I think... and even I'm guilty of this, where you want everything to be nice and pretty and even and everything else, but at the end of the day, it is just that, a tool. If it's arguing kind of, so to speak, with you about the letter form, or, you know, your eye is just kind of not feeling what Super Tool is throwing down, don't be afraid just to call it a liar and kind of move on with what you think is right. So that's kind of what I'm doing here to some degree, is a lot of trusting my eye, which I know that sounds frightening, but I promise it's not. So there kind of comes a point here where we would want to start thinking about that inflection point. That starts to get a little bit too thick, I think. I'm noticing that kind of flares out a little bit too, so maybe we kind of nudge some of these in a little bit more. But I think we're kind of getting there. Oops. So maybe something like that. I think we are going to go ahead and throw the inflection point in here. So that will throw a little bit of panic into some of these curves here. But kind of what I'm hoping with this is that I can use this to kind of smooth these out a little bit. And I think that'll curve around a little bit nicer, perhaps. Do we get something more like that? Kind of do the same here too. And then maybe do the same up top. top here as well. So that's, in my mind, this is kind of where it all starts to fall into place. So maybe something about like that. Maybe take a little bit out of there. I think that kind of helped. But roughly, I think we're getting this into position a little bit better, and that can actually come down a little bit more. We could put Super Tool here and see what kind of panic I throw it into. Try out Super Tool suggestions and see kind of what we think of that. I mean, it's not terrible. This part seems a little bit wonky still. So I think that's where I'm gonna go against Super Tool's suggestions a little bit. Another thing I'm curious, those are 55 and 59 and 42. So I kind of wonder, maybe that kind of is more, it is kind of, so that's 77, 76, that's a little bit more even, I think. Something like that. So I think what we kind of have to do here is kind of trust our eyes a little bit more. So that's what we will do, and kind of tweak and adjust as we go. So maybe something kind of like that. I think it's okay. It is kind of bulgy right about there. Let me take some weight out. But if we do the S in context here, and actually let's unlock the image and let's get that in the lowercase s. So hopefully this goes by a little bit quick. And I'm also kind of realizing too, this episode may run long, but I figured everybody would appreciate seeing this wrap up. So don't mind that it runs a little bit long. So we could do stair, star, state. Oops, can't do socks, plural. There we go. I think we've got a pretty decent S. Did I say that with some trepidation? I don't know. But there we go. Okay, so let's bring this project home here, shall we? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take I'm going to take these parts off, and effectively what we're going to do is we're going to use the spine, and this will take some adjusting too. This may be more work than it's worth. It might have been worth it to draw this from scratch, but we're going to try this first before I go to that extreme. So all I'm going to do is just kind of get these 2 points to that stage. And then from here, we're just going to kind of rough all of these shapes in. I may take out the inflection points actually as I'm looking at this, and we'll re-add those later. That's fine. And then similar to what we did before, we're going to take, well, what do we have? Do we have something that terminates a little bit sooner? Maybe we don't. So it looks like the lowercase s is going to need its own terminal here, which is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of draw that in and get that there. Kind of get everybody in position here. And then what I'm going to do is we're just going to loosely get these in place. Kind of get that top about where I like it. Maybe something like that. And then for now, what I'm going to do is we're just going to kind of lop it off right about there. But what I want to do with this is make sure I got all these corners set up correctly. But I think what I'm going to do is open the corner on that so it's a little bit easier. And then what we'll do is we'll copy, paste. We'll rotate these around. The bottom, of course, doesn't want to play nice, which is fine. But we'll just try to get these a little bit more in position here too. Actually, maybe we just kind of scale this up like such. And that kind of gets us there. In hindsight, I probably should have just redrawn this, but I feel like I've kind of set myself down this path, so here we are. But then basically what we're going to do, kind of bring these in a little bit more. And then try and figure out a way to make this as pleasing as we can here. May actually drop this back just a little bit. I feel like it kind of flares out a little bit in the scan, and I don't really care for that 100%. And I would like to mimic the angle that the other side has, so maybe we do something kind of like that. And then if you guessed it was all about moving handles around, then you were correct. So kind of get all of this into position as best we can. I always kind of love the magic of this point because it's like now it's starting to look like the character we want. I am going to kind of relax the spine of that a little bit, so I'm going to go perhaps a tiny bit against the original drawing. But if we do some side bearings real quick, we can at least get this in context. Now it does feel a little bit on the thick side, so we are going to have to kind of thin this out a little bit. And that's fine. We can do that. And so we don't want the macro window, we want to kind of auto align these. What I may do is just add a touch more contrast here. So that's 53, that's 59. Yeah, we'll maybe kind of bring these back down to something about like that. I think that kind of helps a little bit with the contrast. And then kind of adjust the spine from there, but maybe that's kind of what I want to do. And then again, it's mostly about sorting out curves and making them feel nice and curvy. So go ahead and we'll do that. We can use Super Tool again. I don't think a lot of these were really super far off, which is kind of nice. So it is a little bit more cleaned up than what the original drawing is, but I think that's okay. Just a lot of back and forth on an S. If you're patient with it, it will pay off. So we're at about 77 for the spine there. I think what I'm going to do is maybe bring that up to 70. And then... it does kind of feel a bit thick through there. I think I just kind of need to sort out what this looks like. And I think at this point we probably could throw in this here. And maybe, again, kind of like the uppercase, that kind of helps us out maybe a little bit more. Just kind of even things out a little bit. It gives us those micro adjustments that we need to make. But I think at this point, it's looking fairly decent. If I gave it a little bit tighter spacing there, I think we can just go ahead and remove the background there. But let's see here. If we throw it in a couple of words, we can start to kind of determine if this is feeling too thick, too thin, or what we've got going on here. So maybe we kind of adjust the spine a little bit that way. But yeah, I think something like that is again serviceable. You know, probably in the next couple episodes here, I think what we're going to start taking a little bit more of a deeper dive into is going to be proofing. So that'll be something that we'll probably want to take a look at and just kind of make sure this is looking good in the context of a paragraph or something like that. Because after all, I am kind of expecting this will be probably said more like body copy and that kind of thing. But if we jump back to the main screen here, we pull down our Latin thing here. So I guess the good news is we've got a full alphabet, so I'm pretty excited about that. So yeah, there we go. We have a full regular weight of record Gothic A through Z, and in the next probably episode or two here, we'll probably take a little bit more of a deep dive of these characters, make sure maybe we've got like the weight, the spacing, that kind of thing set where I want it. Once we have that, then I think it's a little bit more appropriate to start moving on to things like diacritical marks, special characters, language support. Numbers are kind of their own thing. We can kind of figure out where that slots in at some point. But I think that just kind of having the base alphabet down and in a good place is going to make our work a lot easier later on, especially as we start adding more to this or using derivatives of these letter forms to create new letter forms. So it's probably a good idea to get that foundation set up. So as always, if you've got any comments on this, if there's anything that you saw or you've got any input, feel free to leave that in the comment section below. It's been great kind of reading through those throughout this series and just kind of seeing how everyone's even progressing on their own typefaces as well. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit like and subscribe on this video. This helps my channel massively. And if you have a type friend or somebody who's type curious that's into this kind of stuff, it always helps if you decide to pass these videos along and share them with anybody else as well. But with that, I think we're going to call it for this video. So as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.